All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Abundance Formula podcast. I'm super excited about today's guest. Her name is Michelle Salt. I can't wait for you all to hear her story, her journey, and all the things about her. She's, at the very least, to just tell you, a two-time Paralympian, but she's way more than that. I'll let her share. So thank you so much for being here, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, so with that, let's launch into you telling everyone your backstory, and sort of how you've arrived at where you are today and with what you're doing today.
Sure. So in 2011, I was in a near fatal motorcycle accident. I hit a guardrail going 120, did cartwheels in the air. I hit the guardrail again. Upon impact, I broke all kinds of bones, almost every bone in both my legs, my pelvis, hips, L4, L5 vertebrae. When I broke my right femur in two places, it severed my femoral artery. So luckily, I just done my first fitness competition. And, I was in the best shape of my life. So I held strong for 23 minutes, which is pretty unheard of. I was on life support for 7 days, in the hospital for 5 months. And part of my many surgeries was the amputation of my right leg. So when I decided when I found out that my leg was gone, I decided pretty quick that I wanted to become a Paralympian. 2.5 years later, I was able to do exactly that when I became Canada's first female Paralympic snowboarder for Canada. And then, went on to another games, 2018, and retired after that.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to ask, which is kind of cool that you mentioned that right after you figured out that your leg was amputated, that's something you want to do. Prior to when you lost your leg, what did your dreams or aspirations of what you were going to do with your life, career look like before then?
So I was 26 when I lost my leg. I had a great job. I had money saved for a down payment on a house. I was going to do an around the world trip. And, it's obviously that changed significantly when, I just didn't lose my leg. The life that I knew was no longer that life, right? And so in a lot of ways, I grieve my old life. But I thought that I knew exactly what I wanted and who I was, and that changed.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you snowboard before as well?
I did. I was more of a park rat that just loved hitting jumps, rails, and all of that. So to transition to being a high performance athlete, riding border cross was very different from what I knew.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm getting at with this is, and I love how your story has panned out, because it's just another testimony of this for people to hear. Is I'd heard this really great sermon a couple weeks ago, and I loved this analogy that was used. Is he was talking about how we go through crushing seasons of life, and making this analogy to a grape, that once a grape is crushed, it can no longer be a grape anymore, but it can now become wine, which was a really cool concept to realize. Like, if we can let go of being a grape and surrender to that process of becoming wine, becoming something more than we actually were before, then it's amazing what can happen. And what I think so cool is, so you didn't care to be an Olympic snowboarder before, but the crushing actually gave you a dream. The crushing actually is what up-leveled your existence here to become, not just a two-time Paralympian, not just the first female for Canada, but 13-time World Cup champion, 3-time national champion, the pioneer for wake surfing, a skydiver, a keynote speaker, all these amazing things you are, which was never on your radar before. And I think that's an amazing thing for people to realize, because other people out there listening are going through a crushing season right now. And you're like, oh my gosh, why? Relearning, like you said, letting go of this old way of life. But as much as it is a letting go, it's also can be a becoming something more than a grape. And I think your story is such a beautiful example of that. So yeah. And one thing I wanted to ask you, you already brought it up. So you're actually the first. I've had other Paralympians on, but I realized just the other day that you're the first one I've had on that actually lost their leg. The other people I've had on so far were born without theirs, whether both or, above and below knee. But so it's a difference. Obviously, both have their own challenges, but the challenge of yours is this concept of you knew what life was like and had done things for 26 years in a certain way. How did you kind of get through this experience, or describe to us now this process of, you're letting go of being this grape and now you're finding a new way, and in keeping your head on straight through that journey? Because like, I think that's where people struggle in this abundance journey, is it's like great, it's great when things are going good, but when you're in the journey part and the recreation, the re-evolution of yourself part, that's really hard. And I know that's kind of your thing to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's, I think transition can be hard for anyone, and a lot of the times when we're dealt with these trials and tribulations, we're not given the choice to, to say yes or no to that. So it's it was a huge transition for sure, learning to be an amputee, and I knew that it wasn't going to define me or hold me back. If anything, it's enabled me to try things and to be a lot more active now than I was before. But it was really tough. Like when I first came home, I didn't realize that being an above the knee amputee in a house full of stairs was going to be a challenge, especially one that was, I was constantly in pain and couldn't wear my leg for very long. So it was tough for sure. Sometimes it would take me like an hour just to get all of my clothes downstairs, because I'd have to grab a handful of clothes and then throw them down the stairs and then just slide my butt down the stairs, because I wasn't going to walk down the stairs with this, this leg that I didn't really know how to use. And so it had its challenges for sure.
Mm-hmm. And mentally, how did you just keep taking that one next step instead of just kind of being giving up and just being like, well, I guess I won't have all because I think a lot of people, that's the choice, is you can either go create this new life, it'll look way different, but it can be just as good or better, or you cannot and just kind of settle. How do people not do that?
Yeah, so I think for me there was a couple very comforting quotes or analogies that definitely helped. One was, so my business partner 3 years before my accident had passed away in a motorcycle accident, and I was looking through some of his emails that he had sent me, obviously prior to him passing, and this quote stuck out to me, and it's been my quote ever since. And what really gave me strength, and it said, when you feel your worst and you try your hardest, that's when you gain the most. So that that resonated with me. Another was, I had a friend come visit me in the hospital, and they said that a certain religion believes that when you are being created, you are shown your life prior to being put on the earth, and you're given the option to say yes or no to your life. And that gave me so much comfort, because it was like, I said yes. I knew that I was going to lose my leg and to go through this like really hard transition in this time in my life, but yet I said yes. So something good must be in the horizon. There must be so many amazing things to come if I said yes to this life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love that. So one of your favorite things as a keynote speaker to speak about is resilience, grit, and tapping into your inner badass. What are some of the tips you give people on how to do that for them, whatever their life may look like?
Well, I think a lot of it is just not allowing ourselves to be defined by our tragedies, right? So, for me, I will speak to my story, and then, when I about at the very end, when I'm about to walk off stage, I challenge them to, to really find their purpose, to celebrate the little things. That's probably the biggest lesson that I have learned over the years, was to celebrate my small victories. I think that often we don't do that. And you go through something so significant and you have this big picture in mind. And it's always, the focus is always like, let's get to the Paralympics. Let's, a medalist, let's do all of these things. And so we don't celebrate those little things. And I think that can very much contribute to like that grit and that resilience, when we're taking the time to say, hey, like, I did this and I did that, and that all these little things have made me who I am today. And 2018, I did not medal. I went in ranked 3rd overall in the world. I was Canada's podium potential athlete, and for my sport, and I ended up finishing 4th, and I was absolutely heartbroken. And I was so focused on that medal that I failed to see the person that I had become those 6 years as an athlete. So I think that, grit, a lot of it comes from just, sticking to those goals, and but also celebrating those milestones too.
I love that. Yeah, because I think that's how people can, like, as you mentioned, it's probably more fewer and far between the big mountaintop necessarily experiences, but then it's all the things that go into getting that makes up the most of our life. And so to feel the fulfillment we really could from all of the amazingness we do, it comes to celebrating those little things, finally getting down the stairs carrying the clothes. Okay, now finally starting to walk at a faster pace, not, finding a way to be comfortable in my leg, finding a way to jog now, and then now put this snowboard and get down the bunny slope for the first time, and doing like those are all huge victories. But you can miss all of the kudos to yourself for most of your life if you just wait till the big mountaintop moment. So I think that's really huge for people to experience abundance all along their journey, not just the mountaintop experiences, or we'll really miss out on so much that life could be. And those are the things that a lot of people relate to as well, are tapping into those in-between steps. We don't want to just wash those away and focus on just the highlights. People want to know they can do it too and see themselves in your story. And so that's so important.
For sure. And I think that allows us to see how badass we really are, right?
Yes.
It's like, whoa, I did that. That's crazy. Like I wasn't necessarily sure that I could do that, and I did it. And I also did all of these other things too. And it doesn't have to be these major milestones that define us as being strong or, independent, or again, badass. So I think that there are a lot of components that going to like tapping into that grit. But to me, I think the biggest thing is celebrating all of it. And because it doesn't happen overnight. They say that it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at your sport or hobby or whatever it is. But are we just failing to recognize everything that goes into those 10,000 hours?
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, being a pioneer, this was something that made me think of you actually, as I'd heard this woman named Lisa Bevere. She was doing a talk, but this part of the talk I really enjoyed. And she said, sometimes people don't know what they're called to do because they're actually called to do something that's never been done before. So for you being a pioneer of being a first for quite a few things, I was curious, how you kept yourself going when, okay, so you wanted to be a Paralympian, and there hadn't been a female that had done it yet in Canada. You wanted to do another fitness competition again. There's not a bunch of people that pursue doing a fitness. I was so excited to see that in your bio, because I've actually done fitness competitions before as well. And I was like, oh gosh, I love that. I know exactly what goes into doing that. So like for you, I know what that prep's like. So then to be doing that prep and be like, there's not somebody or as many people I can just find on social media to help inspire me in my low days. Like, you're the one. So what is that like in the pursuit of something that's not been done before, to keep yourself going when you don't just have the person to go look at as the example?
Yeah, so with snowboarding, I was able to compete with some other above the knee amputees. So for me, even though, yes, I didn't spend a lot of time with those people while training with the Canadian team, I think for me, it was just being open to adapting to doing things differently than everyone else, and recognizing that everyone is there to help me accomplish my goals, even though they may not know how to help me adapt either. I think my best example out of everything that I've done is skydiving. So there is maybe 2 or 3 other above the knee amputees that jump. Most of them, or the other 2, 3, I've connected with 2, they jump with their leg, and I can't. It's too painful for me. I have very little control because I'm quite high above the knee. So I've learned to fly my body with one leg. And so many people are like, I just don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to teach you. So it has been so much trial and error. Like, we have all figured it out together, and it can be really frustrating sometimes. My progression, like I was skydiving with someone who has like very similar jump numbers the other day, and I was like, wow, that person's already doing like head down. Like, how are they doing head down and I'm not at 100 jumps? But then I also have to realize, like, I spent an hour in the skydive indoor tunnel just learning how to fly my body without spinning completely out of control. So it's been frustrating, but at the same time, like, so rewarding, because I guarantee that those moments I have, those victories, that celebration, internally, is probably a lot different than other people, because they're like, oh, cool, like I got this, and I'm like freaking out inside, like, oh my goodness, I got this, and I did this, going through so much trial and error, like I figured it out. So it's been it's been a neat process in a lot of ways, to be the first for most of my sports, but also, I'm not gonna lie, it's been pretty frustrating too.
Yeah.
Having you have to get creative. You have to just open your mind to different possibilities. Like, I can't be a part of the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. Right. And before having to be so adaptable, but your personality before, would you have considered yourself someone that was really good at like having to do all this trial and error, make it messy, figure it out, work through it, like not compare to other people, or accept where you're at? Was that kind of your forte before? Or is this a new skill that you've now come out with on the other side?
Yeah, and I think most amputees can attest to this too, or anybody with like a significant, physical impairment that might be new, is, you didn't have to really be like that. I've always been a problem solver in my life when it comes to work. I don't take no very well. Like, oh yeah, again, can't be done. I don't deal well with that, because I truly believe that there is always a solution. Um, but that wasn't like the whole adapting. I didn't need to do that, because I had a lot of support staff. I was doing fitness competitions. I would have a regular, workout plan and nutrition plan and all of that, right? So no, it wasn't really a part of my life. And then everything had to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome it's cool just to see again that like too, probably not a skill that you aren't glad to now have. Like, although it's been really tough, that helps you so much in so many aspects of life to deal with things that other people, or like you said, even just the gratitude level that you have. It's like there's people that can be so much happier with their current life. They just don't know that they should be happy for going down the stairs with their laundry. There's so much that people just on the day to day don't know is an abundant blessing to have. And if they could just realize that, they'd be like, wow, I'm so wealthy. Like, doing this thing not going my way, like I still have so much going for me. And until we've, really realized what is out there as options, and that even still though, then there's people that like that wasn't something that you let hold you back either. So again, it's just so inspiring for people to hear the gratitude level available and just what's possible, and that there's people out there like you that don't believe in can't. That's huge.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll be the first to admit that I was that person that took things for granted before my accident. Like, I'd leave my phone in my car and be like, oh, I have to go outside and get my phone, like walk down my steps, outdoor steps, heaven forbid, and get my phone. And so now it's like I got to put my prosthetic leg on and, hope that it's not icy outside. Yeah. So I think it's very easy to take things for granted when you don't have an example of how different things can be. And, for me, that was just, I don't want to say it was forced upon me whatsoever, but I wasn't given another choice. It was like, okay, now I have to do it. Now I have to figure it out. And, it's, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, so as far as goal setting and things like that, that's obviously a forte for you as well. That's a question that I get a lot asked from people on the podcast or events that I've done or speaking, like when I've asked, like, what do you need help with? People want help with like goal setting. So maybe what's one of your most helpful tips, and maybe something that you've learned that's not something you really knew before, like not a classic thing maybe people have heard of that from your journey you've experienced has been a huge thing for you in goal setting and achieving.
Well, I think that goal setting starts with obtainable goals, but at the same time, like maybe a little, I've always been like an extreme goal setter where I'm like, okay, I'm going to the Paralympics and, I'm walking the fitness stage again. But within that goal, again, setting those little goals, which will contribute to those little victories, because that's what helps us stay on track and gives us the motivation to keep going because we are celebrating
Mm-hmm.
the accomplishment of those little goals that helps us get to those big goals. So I'll never forget, being in the hospital and I ended up leaving the trauma facility and going to like a long-term rehab facility where I was for 3.5 months. And my roommate was a young new amputee, and her goal was to become a parent. She just wanted to really have kids and she didn't want to let being an amputee slow her down. And so for her to do that within the first year and then me make the national team, it was really cool. But it was something that we consistently talked about when we were in the hospital. Like that's what kept us going, is like, okay, I need to get to the Paralympics. She wants to be a mom, she wants to get pregnant. And so I think a vision board can also be really helpful too. My family brought pictures of me doing my fitness competition. They put it all over the wall to help me stay focused on those goals. And so, small goals within the big goal, obtainable goals, but obtainable, you know, maybe that's not necessarily my thing, is obtainable, but I think that anything is obtainable if you really just like, put everything that you have into it and stay focused. And then yeah, vision board or some way to keep on track to that goal and to stay motivated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Just going back to those, even goes back to that adaptability thing. Like you may put your mini goals down, and it may not end up being that exact step, but because you're just pursuing the steps, you made another step, even if it didn't look exactly as you thought it was, and that even if it looked like an unattainable step, like you started trying to do the step, and then the real step developed, and you still then made your way where you ultimately wanted to go. You just have to start breaking it down like that, which was, I think, is a huge thing. People just go too far out and just don't there. I know even for me in the past, it was hard to try to make the smaller steps to the big thing because I didn't really know all the steps it would take. And I'm someone that's like, well, I want to know that that is actually the step, and that effort put into that step is going to be effort worthwhile. And it's like, well, again, it still may not look that way, but it's never not worthwhile. It's moving you the direction. You're getting in that realm of people. You may meet somebody there that's the person that knew the thing you needed to do. Like all the things are breadcrumbs. You don't get to know all the things. So just start doing that, and you'll pick up those little breadcrumbs as you go. So I love that. One thing I did want to ask you too, that I haven't asked anybody, was, so being an amputee athlete, Paralympian, if people aspire to do that, so obviously starting out, you didn't know anything about how to do that. How do people, or like as far as business tips, if they are an amputee that now wants to pursue this type of kind of career that you've gone, where now you've competed at high level sports, you have brand sponsorships, you're ambassadors, you're traveling, they're doing this kind of stuff. What are your tips for them as to how to even get into that world, speaking, what it can look like? How do they even do that?
Yeah, so whether it be sports, speaking, even returning to work, I think that you started like a small level. When I first started speaking, I would go and do, short half an hour, 20-minute speaking engagements at no cost to build my portfolio. And then from there, it transpired into, speaking to crowds of 7,000. So it starts small and then slowly, knowing your worth and when you can start charging, I think is really important. As for sport, just contacting your local grassroots program and seeing, when they train and what that looks like. And, business wise, I've been really lucky after I competed in the 2018 games. And, I don't want to say I was necessarily forced to retire, but I had definitely, I'd done what I needed to do, and I think that it was my time to give my spot to someone new on the team. Um, I wasn't really sure what my life looked like because I had spent so much time speaking and being an athlete, and I didn't think that my story carried weight anymore because I hadn't medaled, and so I was in not a great place mentally. And I applied for this job as a medical mobility rep. Didn't necessarily think that I would get it, and I did, and it changed my life. And I was like, this is the job that I want. Like, I was so hungry to get on with that company and to get that job because I knew that it was like a dream job for me. And I was persistent, but not in like a wow, this person's like desperate for this job. I like showed how keen and eager I was. And you know the second I got on as the medical mobility rep, which is an ATP down in the States, I come home and I took an occupational therapy aid course, and I take kinesiology courses, and I do all of these things so that I could be really good at my job. So I think it's just truly committing to what you want, doing the research. Google
Mhm.
is an amazing, there is so many resources on the internet. So just take the time, like allocate the time, find, whether it be an hour a day or whatever the case is, find that time in our crazy lives to do your research, to find those resources, whatever the case is. But it takes commitment. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it takes, is commitment.
Mhm. Now for snowboarding, so like because thinking of just again, you had snowboarded before, but then you have to have a specific foot to snowboard with, right? Which probably isn't a normal foot that would go with your prosthetic. I'm a prosthetist, but we don't live where there's a lot of snow, so I haven't got to fit anyone with anything like that. But like, so did you ask your prosthetist who you might need to contact so that you could figure out how to get a foot and then do a snowboard? How did that even look to get started in the sport you wanted to?
So my prosthetist was around my age, maybe like a couple years older, and so he was still somewhat new
Hmm.
to the. He was awesome. He was my prosthetist for 8 years. I just absolutely adored Tabor. So he wasn't really sure where to look, and a lot of the doctors weren't sure either. And so I just Googled, you know, amputee snowboarder, and the Biodapt VersaFoot and Moto
Hmm.
knee came up. Actually, at the time, the VersaFoot wasn't even a thing. It was just the Moto knee. And Mike
Hmm.
Schultz and his incredible story of, winning X Games medals and stuff with this knee
Hmm.
that he had to. I was like, wow, this is it. So, like, it's. I'll never hold that against my prosthetist whatsoever for not necessarily knowing, because it was such a new product. I don't even think that Tabor had anybody to introduce him to the product, right? So
Hmm.
again, it may take us doing a little bit of research and then bringing it to my prosthetist. Like, my prosthetist was amazing. He would, anytime I was like, hey, Tabor, I want to try and make it to the 2016 Rio Paralympics in cycling. What can we do? And be like, okay, we're going to take an old socket and we're going to mount a clip to it, and then have this post that has a mountain bike like a pedal, and you can
Hmm.
just clip. Like, he was always open to my absolutely crazy ideas. And that's what makes an amazing prosthetist, is like, hey, we're gonna figure this out, but it's a team, right?
Hmm.
Mark, like, you
Hmm.
figure it out, you throw these ideas back and forth with each other. Yeah.
Hmm. I love that. And it kind of just shows you have to be bold enough, like you said, to advocate for yourself. And that, okay, so I'm doing Google, so now I found the knee, so now I might have to contact the person about this knee, and then who do they know that can distribute? Do I need a grant to get this knee, or can my insurance get this knee? Or like, there's details to figure out. And if you really want it, you just have to keep following each of those details, and like, don't just surrender because, oh well, the process didn't know, or the whoever didn't know. That's it. Like, keep being persistent to find the thing and be bold enough to call and to ask the questions and to be a beginner and you'll get your answers. So I think that's really cool that you got the answers and got where you wanted to go. You mentioned a little bit about mental health a while back, even being in there with your roommate. I was curious from your experience, obviously, like did you feel supported properly in your amputee experience? Or is there an area we need to be better in that space for helping amputees to get back on their feet and mentally as well? I feel kind of like we could do better, but I don't, I want to know your experience.
No, I think you're right. And we are getting better. I've been an amputee for 12 years now, and it's progressed so much in the last 12 years. When I first became an amputee, I had another above the knee amputee come visit me in the hospital, and she was able to answer my questions, but I hadn't connected with any athletes, so it was a little different because she wasn't active and into a lot of sport. And so in that sense, it was like you said, we have to advocate for ourselves, especially when we're the first of many things, or we are just not getting the answers right away. We have to advocate. Another thing is to, prosthetics, bionic knees, microprocessors knees not being covered, like having to is to be able to, to walk, to walk with a processor. That was tough too. But in terms of mental health, I think that the support group that I went to was helpful. Even though it was a lot of older amputees, it was helpful. And then it'd be really cool to have, a mentoring program, and have like big brothers, big sisters. But for amputees, I think there are programs for sure already out there like that. But in my experience, I haven't seen many of those. When I came on the team, I was, and this isn't, to anything against anyone whatsoever, but I was the most disabled person on the team because there was no other above the knee amputees. Everybody else was a below the knee, had been an amputee for a while. And so I often felt like I held my team back, or there was things that people didn't understand, like for me to walk with my moto knee from the parking lot or from our our accommodations to the lift was exhausting for me. I was all of my energy, and then I would just go home and I would just cry at the end of the day because I'm like why can't I have additional support? Like why, I've been advocating for myself and no one's listening. And so it was really tough. I, as anyone from any profession that works with new amputees that's listening in, my focus was my focus was becoming a Paralympian. Where I failed myself was that it became my everything, and I didn't heal. I didn't talk to anybody for almost 2 years after my accident about this grieving process, about like at the end of the day, you are almost grieving the loss of someone you love, like your old life, what 26 years. And I didn't, because I thought it was fine. I was just going to go and become a Paralympian. And, I was okay in some ways, but, about 2 years in, it hit me like a brick. And I went through the hardest time of my life. And then after the 2018 games, it hit me all over again. And all I can say is I'm really lucky to be alive today because it got dark. And so, having those people to lean on is really important. But, those of us that are trying to help someone who, does have a new disability, just being an advocate for them too, and trying your best to listen, because, it's easy to say no one understands, but people are, we have to give people the benefit of the doubt when they are trying.
Yeah. Well, it's just good for people to hear that maybe who have access to these programs or to create these programs to know, like, it's one thing, to send somebody to the hospital. Yay, check that box. It's like, well, maybe find out a little bit of what are they thinking, their aspirations. If they don't know, then just, send someone to be there and answer questions. But if like this person already wants to go to the Paralympics, okay, let's send someone that knows a little about this, or at least is active. Like you said, just try, I mean, for your area, or even if someone's not in your area, maybe you can, nowadays, you can Zoom call somebody and be like, hey, let's, especially as as a Paralympian, all the people that I know are into the advocacy stuff, and they will get on the phone with people who are new amputees, and they love to try to figure out, make time to do that. That's part of their job. They do is to do that and to help inspire people know it's possible, or let them know how they can find the program, or find the running clinic, or find the thing. And so if we can like be more intentional listening, like you said, to what their dreams are, what they might want to do, or even just their back, are they a mom right now and they just lost a leg? Let's bring a mom in who's an amputee, who has kids, who can inspire this woman, like, okay, that can happen for you, and just be more intentional in that area, just to continue to light people's fire, give them hope, and really hear them as best as we can. So I think
Yeah.
those are really good tips.
And just a really quick story I want to
Hmm.
share. I always tell people when I go visit new amputees in the hospital, I say pick a goal. And so I had Skyped with Ty Turner. He had just lost one foot at that point. He ended up losing both of his legs below the knee. And then I also went to go see, a couple girls who, one was a below the knee, one was above the knee. And I said, pick your goal, whether your goal is sport. And I told them a bit about the Paralympics. And I think for me, some of my proudest moments have been in 2016. Both of those girls that I had talked to ended up going to the Paralympics on the same team, on the sit volleyball team for Canada. And Ty Turner won the very first medal ever for snowboarding for Canada in the last Paralympics. He won gold and bronze that round. And so it's been so cool to be able to just, even though like I didn't do the work, and I wouldn't sit here and say that I instilled, that goal, but it was that little bit of like, hey, pick a goal, and this is what the Paralympics is about. And then to see that full circle, and
Hmm.
then all three of them going to the Paralympics, it's been pretty cool.
That's really awesome. Well, I'm sure they would say that it definitely had something to do with it. Just again, solidifying, it helps people with big dreams to feel like solidified that they're not crazy, like that. Yeah, and maybe nobody's done it before, but why not you? And so many people are always like, well, why me, as opposed to why not me? And it helps to have somebody like you that definitely is on that train of like, well, why not you? You could do this. Let's figure it out. Pick a goal and head towards that as soon as you leave this place. And so I think they would definitely contribute, that interaction with you to that. And it's important for all of us, no matter what topic we're talking about, to be that believer in somebody. It makes such a difference. I mean, we don't have to have it. We don't have to be believed in, but man, does it help fan your flame if you just have a little outside person that can just be like, yeah, I think you can do this. I don't know what it's going to look like, but go for it. I can't wait to watch you. And just makes you like, okay, I'm going to go for this. And I think that's really huge for all of us to look out to be that person for someone, because it's fulfilling even when you didn't go do the thing. Like, it's fulfilling to just feel like maybe you fanned that flame a little bit, and that you were part of that, which is huge. Well, so tell everyone what you're doing right now, what you're up to, what people need to keep an eye out for, how to get involved with what you're doing.
Yeah, so as you can see, I'm in a van. I'm in a parking lot right now. A little too sunny to see that, but so as anyone who doesn't know what an ATP is, it's a medical mobility, or in certain parts of Canada, we call it an accessibility and mobility rep. And so essentially, I work with occupational therapists and the odd physiotherapist, and I help them get people with disabilities or that are no longer ambulatory into medical equipment. So wheelchairs, for kids, gait trainers and walkers or standers, all of that, hospital beds. So I 5 years ago, I started in the Okanagan, where there was a lot of seniors, and then decided that I wanted to specialize in pediatrics and spinal cord injuries. So for the last couple of years, I've been doing that, and I've had a lot of pediatric clients, parents say to me, well, accessibility is tough, and even spinal cord injury, like it's tough because we don't know where we can go, even out for dinner. Like we'll get there in the chair or two, and if you have a power chair, they're 200 pounds. You're not going to be picking that power chair up over a stair to get into this restaurant. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I started thinking about all of these adventures that I've done, and I was like, yeah, not accessible. There's very steep gravel trails, or uneven trails, or no ramps. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to quit my job that I absolutely love, sell my almost everything that I own, and move into a van with my dog. And so I talked to Winnebago. They gave me, they've loaned me a fully accessible Roam, which is an accessible camper van. It has a UVL in it, and a lot of accessible features. And I'm traveling across North America finding accessible adventure spots.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been following all your event. Yeah, make sure you follow. Where is the chief places people should follow you to, see pieces of that adventure?
Yeah, I think that either Instagram or my athlete Facebook page are
Mm-hmm.
good, because you get those little short clips, but then you also get the link to my YouTube channel as well, where you can see my longer YouTube videos where I go into like more description of what's accessible, maybe what isn't accessible, because most places will say they're fully accessible, and then they aren't,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. But my focus is like these really cool spots that maybe not other people haven't documented. So yeah, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all Michelle Salt.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so the ultimate mission, what would be like your dream outcome after you've completed? I know it's like 5 months. When we were talking to get you on the podcast, you're like, I'm on the road for 5 more months. It's like, what
Yeah.
is the end vision you would love the outcome to be at the end of these months?
Um, exactly what the whole focus of this is, just being able to showcase those accessible spots. But I would really love to see this turn into like a thing, like a show,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Part of my this journey is also meeting up with these incredible people that are sharing their story with me, and then we're jumping in the Winnebago and we're going on an adventure. And so I've already met so many cool people that have been able to share their story with me, and share with me what they do and how it's very unique to the adaptive world. So I've just got started. I've only been on the road for 17, 18 days now. I still have 4 months left to go, more than 4 months left to go. So stay tuned. There's going to be so many cool things. Like yesterday I rode a Sea-Doo into the ocean and rode with
Oh,
dolphin.
yeah, I saw that. That's awesome.
Right? So like this is just the start. There are a lot of really amazing things to come.
Yeah, that would be a really awesome show. Like super, super easy to keep it exciting, like you said, because every adventure would be another adventure, and like I said, probably something we haven't really seen much of. And then because you have to kind of find these places, like you said, that really are actually accessible for what you're trying to do, and then hear new people's stories and new inspiration and journeys along the way. So what an inspirational show to watch too, and positivity, adventure, like all the things. So I love that. That's awesome. Well, so one of the final questions I love to ask everyone is what does living an abundant life mean to you? And if someone were to ask you how they could start to build an abundant life for themselves, what would you tell them?
Um, Abundant life. When I think of abundancy, and I just think of, you know, adventure and figuring it out and finding a way to do it, and never allowing myself to be limited. That to me is like, that's an abundant life. Traveling, what I'm doing right now, like that's my vision of exactly that. When I think of it, is just like living in a van, which has
Mhm.
its challenges, get me wrong. um I think that, to anybody listening in who isn't maybe sure what their life looks like yet, which I was in that exact same place 12 years ago. I was like, what does my life look like as an amputee? Just know that if you pursue it and you go for it, it is totally possible. I'll never forget sitting in a closet, bawling my eyes out, drinking, uh, you know, out of the bottle of wine, straight out of the bottle of wine, throwing my high heels like out, well, not throwing them out, but like
Yeah.
putting them out to give them away, my 5-inch heels that I absolutely loved, and thinking like, is there going to be more? Is there going to be more to my life? And I kept saying, there is. It's all going to be worth it. I promise you that it's going to be worth it. And look at where I am today. So yeah, that is just like, you make the life that you want, right? It is, no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So just go for it. Whatever you want to do, just do it. Just make it happen.
Limitless. I love it. That's awesome. Perfect. All right, I'll pause our recording.